Hello, my name's Brad and welcome to my Brad Ventures with the Psych YouTube channel. I'm a psychology undergraduate and I've created this channel as a space to discuss the mind, consciousness, and what it means to be human. I have a particular interest in the research surrounding psychedelic assisted psychotherapy, and I've reached out to a number of individuals and professionals whom I think will be interesting to talk to. I've decided to document our conversations for people maybe like yourself who share the same interests. Today, I'm going to be speaking to Rory Stephens. Rory is an Associate Minister and a Ceremonial Guide at the Sacred Earth Sanctuary in Massachusetts, a church that incorporates psilocybin mushrooms or magic mushrooms into its practices. I've never heard of a magic mushroom church before. I've got a million questions to ask him and I'm super excited about it. So hopefully we can find out some of the psychological benefits these mushrooms can provide us with. I hope you enjoyed the video. Hello, Rory. How are you, brother?
I'm doing great. How are you doing?
Good. I'm very well. Thank you. I just wanted to start by extending my appreciation to you for reaching out and agreeing to do this interview, conversation, whatever you want to call it. So I'm sure you're a busy guy. So thank you very much. Um,
Absolutely. Thank you for having me.
Not at all. Over the past couple of weeks, I've been considering what questions I might ask, and I must admit I've been a bit overwhelmed with where to start. The idea of a church that incorporates psilocybin mushrooms into its practices is not a concept we're familiar with here in the UK at all. And it sounds fascinating. So if you wouldn't mind, maybe you could start by telling us all about the Sacred Earth Sanctuary and what it's about.
Absolutely. So, Sacred Earth Sanctuary is a registered 508c1a nonprofit. We're a faith-based organization based out of Massachusetts in the United States.
Cool.
We've been registered for about 3 years now, a little over actually. And essentially, our main practice is working with the psilocybin mushroom as our sacrament. And so, we aren't what most people would, consider as a regular church because regular churches, commonly people are going to church every Sunday for Sunday services and things like that. We hold ceremonies for our members to be able to come and sit with the sacrament, to be able to connect to something bigger than them, but also to themselves. And so that way they can go in, connect to a higher power, and really see what work that they want to do to be able to transform themselves into the best version they can be.
Wow. It's a very unorthodox approach, or it is to me, because I've not heard of it. I mean, are there many of you out there? Are there many psilocybin churches in the US?
There are more and more that are coming to be.
Wow.
I would say, from what I know, I mean, I know of a couple, at least a dozen off the top of my head, probably that exist. But a lot
Wow.
of people do remain underground more so, just because, it's easier to stay out of sight per se,
Mm.
where there is some sort of gray area with this whole thing. We are a registered nonprofit, so because we do work with psilocybin mushroom as our sacrament, we're protected under the Religious Freedom Act. And so we're
Brilliant.
able to do this. It doesn't necessarily make it legal, but it does allow for us to practice, what we believe in, our religion per
Mm.
se.
Fantastic. So I wanted to come on to like how you guys structure things in a minute, but first, if you don't mind, I just wanted to ask a little bit about you. Tell us a bit about, if you don't mind, your upbringing, where you're from, and what's steered you in this path.
Yeah. So I'm 31 years old. I grew up in New Hampshire, which is in the northeast region of the United States. And I grew up in a town called Samerton, and it's a really small town. I don't even know that there's one stoplight in it. Um, so it's really small. I went to a regional school, so there was 3 or 4 different towns that all came together to be able to, have enough people to make the school practical.
Mm.
So, once I graduated from that, I went to college in Boston, Massachusetts, and, graduated with a bachelor's degree there in industrial design. So, of
Wow.
course, what I'm doing now does not necessarily go hand in hand with a degree in design. But the
Mm.
reason why I started steering in this path is because I dealt with a lot of depression in my life. Starting from like in seventh grade, I started to have certain things playing out that at the time maybe I didn't realize were hand in hand with that. But as I got older and went into college and everything, that escalated and it became something that really was extremely difficult. I didn't really know how to navigate it, and it made me feel like I was really alone per se in the world. Um, so I dealt with a ton of depression and anxiety that led me down this path of really I came to a place where it was either I was going to end my life or I was going to figure out how to live. And
Mm.
so I kind of started putting my head down, digging into self-help books and things like that, and especially spirituality.
Brilliant.
I just felt like I needed to connect with my inner self to be able to express myself authentically and feel like I belonged. And so, as I was trying to, learn how to navigate my depression and anxiety, then eventually came to the place where I stumbled upon psilocybin, the mushroom.
Mm.
And through that, the first time I really worked with it, what it did was it allowed me to feel love again. And,
Wow.
for so long, because of depression and everything, I was disassociating to such an extent that I really didn't feel a whole lot, especially when you're on SSRIs and things like that, kind of numbs you. And so
Mm.
this opened me up to being able to feel again. And I knew there was something with that that was really powerful. And so from there, I just started working with it more and more and expanding my practice more and more. And eventually, down the road, here we are.
Wow. Can I just say how happy you look as well? It's nice to hear that you've come from that kind of history and you seem very comfortable in yourself and very articulate and just very happy. So it's brilliant as well for it's just another piece of anecdotal evidence to add to the pot of the potential benefits of psilocybin. So that's fantastic. So at what point in your journey did you come across the sacred? Did you come across the Sacred Earth Sanctuary, or did you kind of start it? What's the situation there?
So, a really good friend of mine, Christina Ellery, she's the founder of the church.
Mm.
And essentially, what took place was I met her in a very serendipitous type of way, where we just randomly crossed paths as two strangers, and she approached me. She had an intuitive call to approach me, I guess is really what I would say.
Wow.
And she was like, she felt called to me and she's like, I work with sacred plant medicine and I felt like maybe it's something that you'd be interested in.
Mm.
And, I was very much so. And so I reached out to her a week or so later, we connected. And then from there, she expressed what she was doing. And of course, it was directly in alignment with everything I was navigating in life. It was almost picture perfect. And so then from there, she had just started the church or just registered it officially. And so then we dove in and really started to build it together in a lot of ways.
Wow.
She had the process and had worked with quite a few people, had some members and everything, but we dug in and made the website, the statement of beliefs and the bylaws and all the things that come with creating a church.
So I can see on the website that you are an associate minister, is that right? And a ceremonial
Yes.
guide. Can you tell us a bit about exactly what that role entails?
Yeah. So being the associate minister is really standing in a place where you are guiding people, for me, in my own way of looking at it, to their own truth. And it's kind of standing in a place where I am bringing knowledge and wisdom through my own experiences and my own connection with the sacred plant, the mushroom, to be able to bring insight to others in a way. And so I facilitate ceremonies myself. Of course, Christina does that too. We also
Mm.
co-facilitate them together. But she is the lead minister, the head minister. And so I kind of come in, behind to be able to really do a lot of the support to facilitate it in a way that is, the masculine energy of the church where she comes in
Mm.
with the feminine. And so through that balance, I'm able to, cultivate a really beautiful experience just through the lens that I'm able to offer.
Wow, that sounds awesome. So the first thing I want to get my head around is are you guys a retreat? Like, do you offer set courses for a fee, or are people, do they come on a regular basis and pay a membership or something?
So we don't have a membership fee, but we do have members. So in our eyes, when we were, going through the building of the church and everything, we thought that it's really important that anybody can be a part of the church, because it's just something that it should be the freedom of expression to believe what you believe, and that should come free of charge. We
Hmm.
do, request essentially a requested contribution for the services that we offer,
Hmm.
because the church has to be able to be funded to be able to exist. And so we accept donations from our members and everything. And we also, for the services, require a contribution. And we work, in a way where we offer payment plans and things like that. So that way it's accessible for everyone. But of course, in this world, we have to be able to fund things.
Of course.
So, each service we provide is a different tiered price, essentially, where some are much lower cost, some are more a higher cost. I wouldn't necessarily say that we're a retreat because we're not something that's luxury. And for some reason, my mind always compares a retreat to something that is like a luxury escape of the world to go and really sink into this.
Hmm.
We are a very small church, and what we do where we hold ceremonies is essentially in a big bell tent out back that's cultivated in a way that allows for people to feel at home, feel safe, but it's not, in an elaborate resort type of
Hmm.
place.
And what facilities, other facilities, do the members have access to anything else? I saw on the website you're in a very beautiful nature reserve. So there are places they can go for walks and that kind of thing.
Yeah, so where we're located right now is in Salisbury, Massachusetts. And essentially where we are, we're on a kind of a small piece of land, but it's beautiful. It's kind of off the beaten path. It's a
Hmm.
really old house. Essentially, I think it's the second oldest house in this neighborhood, a few
Hmm.
hundred years old and everything. Directly across the street from us, we have a beautiful rail trail that's a paved path that goes all the way through the marshes and connects, all the different towns and everything together. So people
Hmm.
are able to go through there. It's really kind of a neat little spot here. We have a garden that's set up and everything. We have our fire pit and stuff to have fires after ceremony.
Hmm.
And something really unique is that for some reason we have all the animals you can imagine. Like there's
Oh, really?
raccoons, there's owls that you hear calling all the time.
Oh, dude.
We see coyotes and everything. I mean, it's really cool. So it's a small little plot of land, but it's really special.
It sounds like a nice break from corporate life, man.
Exactly.
So, coming on to the ceremony itself, I just want to know all about it from the preparation to the main bit and then the post ceremony. Just tell us what happens.
Yeah, so basically I'll start from the very beginning. If you
Mm,
wanted to become a member with the church, then you would fill out our membership form. From there, if you were interested in sitting in ceremony or working with the sacrament at all, we do an intake screening process just to make sure that it's the right fit, that it will be a safe environment for you to be able to work with the sacrament and come and sit. So we go through that, we do like a call and everything to make sure that it's all in alignment. From there, we can set up a ceremony. And essentially, with that, we do a 2 week preparation for that. And that includes, a dieta where we have people eat really clean, a high alkaline diet. And essentially, that is removing all animal derivative products and things like that, removing coffee or any caffeine, anything like that, any recreational drugs, alcohol. So it's basically cleansing the body as much as you can so that you're coming into your own vibrational energy. With that
wow.
being said, we do also require people to come off their SSRIs if they're on any. And
Okay.
so there's, contraindications that come with working with psilocybin to some extent because psilocybin does turn into psilocin and that binds to the serotonin receptors in the brain. So serotonin, of course, is also with SSRIs. And so those bind to the same receptors. So if you have too much serotonin, you can have serotonin toxicity. where
Wow, I didn't
your
know
brain
that.
is flooded by it. It's a really rare thing when it comes to psilocybin, but it's still something that we're precautious about.
Mm,
Um, so of course, weaning off of those is something that we recommend you connect with your doctor doing because we're not medical professionals in that realm. So we want to make sure that everything is safe when you're doing that because that's a complicated process.
mm,
But from there, after the 2 week preparation period, you of course come here where we are in Salisbury, and we go through essentially it's a 24-hour stay. And we do various tiers. So we do, solo ceremonies. We also do group ceremonies and things like that. So when you arrive, we do introductions, get to know each other and everything. From there, we go on a nature walk down the rail trail that I talked about. We do a couple little activities where we give people like a bottle to be able to go and pick things out of nature, stick them in the
mm.
bottle, and they put that on the altar
I like
during their
that. Yeah, that's a
ceremony
cool
to pick
idea.
up the vibration. And we do a fun activity before you leave with that, which I'll get into. And so after the nature walk, we come back, we sit and we talk all about intentions because it's really important to have an intention of, the why of why you're sitting with the psilocybin, what you're trying to get out of the experience with it. So we do that. From there, we sit and we do breath work. And so it's like a 45-minute holotropic breath work session to be able to really get any stagnant energies moving, clear out any blockages and stuff, and just allow for people to really settle into the space.
Mm.
Um, Following that, people have about an hour as we prepare the medicine, which is the tea. So we do a tea with fresh ginger steeped in spring water. We add just a little bit of honey, and then of course the psilocybin mushroom as well. And
Nice.
so from that point, ceremony starts, and ceremony lasts about 4 hours from the time that they drink the tea to the time that we are really exiting out. Of course, with a tea, it's a liquid, so it absorbs much more and you go into the
Ah,
space much quicker.
I didn't
So
know
you
that.
don't have to wait for it to actually digest through your digestive system and everything for it to be absorbed. The liquid is absorbing much quicker in the stomach.
Is that similar, sorry to interrupt you, to lemon tacking, or is that a different thing?
So it is similar in a way. Lemon teching is essentially taking acid and soaking, acid from the lemon juice and soaking the mushroom in that. So what that's doing is it's essentially jump starting the process of what the stomach acid does. And so it
Mm.
helps to transform the psilocybin into psilocin, which the psilocin is what is absorbed by the body for the effect to take place.
Right.
So it is a little similar in the regard that it allows for an easier absorption into the body.
Cool. Very cool.
Yeah.
So, when you guys are in the ceremony and say there's multiple participants, um, is it kind of self-contained? Are people expected to kind of stay within their own mind, or can they socialize? How does that work?
So this is a really good question because it is, ceremonies throughout, there's a lot of people that do it differently. And the way that we do it is more self-contained, where we provide, eye masks, basically kind of what you would imagine
Ah,
like a sleeping mask or whatever. There's a really beautiful artist, Alex Gray, who creates these eye masks called Mindfold that are meant for psychedelic therapy. They black out completely. And so we give everybody this really beautiful, essentially like Tempur-Pedic mat that they all get to
mm,
lay on for themselves. And, everyone gets pillow, blankets, and the whole 9 yards. We have a playlist that we play. Christina sings, and we have different things that go on, but a lot of the
oh
times it
wow,
is more internal.
wow.
Um, and with that, that doesn't mean that, the eye mask is glued on your face. You're allowed to take it off. You're allowed to, look around and this and that, but we do encourage people to go internal because they're trying to uncover something that is usually uncovered from within. We
Mm,
find that if people are external, they're often trying to avoid the things that they're trying to look at. And they're
mm. Like
seeing
the ego kicking in kind of thing.
the safety mechanisms that of the mind, which I guess you could call the ego, yeah. So that's where we do recommend starting with the eye mask on and staying in your own lane because we have to be courteous of other people's experiences. You
Of
know,
course.
if you have this joyful experience, the person next to you could be going through something really hard, and we have to be
Mm.
compassionate of everyone's experience.
That actually kind of brings me on to my next question. So, I don't know how often these things actually happen in reality, but I mean, do you ever get people kind of freaking out? And if so, how do you tend to that to calm them down?
Yeah, I mean, we've seen everything. Let's just say that. People have gone through a lot of stuff in their lives, and some people it's been really heavy trauma. And so when you go into any situation like this, you have to remember that you have to basically surrender completely into something that is out of your control. And that can
Mm.
be really scary for someone, especially if they're in some sort of survival mode. And so yeah, we've had people that have freaked out, even been somewhat violent to an extent. But with that, you know, you just bring in a unconditional, loving heart to the situation and keep them safe in the best way you can. You know, there
Mm.
are techniques and stuff to bring people out of the experience if it really gets to a certain intensity level, but a lot of the times we can just bring people back down to kind of a grounded place by ensuring them that they're safe, by giving them certain tips and stuff to guide them through the experience. Because a
Mm.
lot of the times, if we don't go through the really difficult experience, then we get stuck in that traumatic response. And so we want to try to move all the way through it and guide them to be able to come out on the other side so that they can have the relief that they're looking for.
Of course, it sounds like quite a responsibility there. It sounds like you guys are all set up for it though. Um, there's a word that I've been hearing a lot since being in this kind of psychedelic space, if you like. And we very briefly spoke about it yesterday, and that word is integration. I've heard many different interpretations of what that word means, and maybe it has different meanings for different situations. But could you just explain to us in your own words what that word means and why it's important?
Sure. I mean, to jump off the back, something I always tell our members is that integration is as important as the ceremony itself, if not even more important.
Mm.
And really to me, what integration is the ability to, well, to put it in simple terms, integrate your experience into your everyday life. And so we are going through these, somewhat mystical experiences, and there's a lot of symbolic things that take place, a lot of emotions that come up. And so integration is allowing for ourselves to essentially absorb all of this stuff into ourselves and make it part of ourselves afterwards, so that we
Mhm.
are moving in a path forward rather than just seeing it as an experience and then not changing anything at all after.
Right.
So integration is that process of actually taking away things from the experience, incorporating it into your life to make improvements and changes to move on that path forward.
And you achieve that through kind of word circles and discussing what they've experienced and hearing other people's interpretations of what that may have been. Is that how it kind of works? Is that how
Yep.
you get there? So cool.
Absolutely. And we do monthly free integration calls for people as well. The following day after ceremony, because people do stay overnight, we do an integration circle and everything too to start to share their experience so that they can begin reflecting upon it. And we offer integration calls and everything like that for people if they're looking for more extensive services to
Mm.
navigate through it. But, everyone's experience is so different. And so sometimes it could be that you're just learning how to feel more in-depth emotions, where other people are trying to decipher symbolic references that maybe appeared in a vision or something that they may have had.
Mm.
So it is really important, and the sharing aspect is important, especially in a community, because then you can reflect off others and see that you're not alone and that there are other people walking this path with you.
Wow, fantastic. The next thing I want to come on to is I saw something on your website, and I'm going to try and share the screen just for anybody watching. I've just started on Zoom, so I may mess this up. Let me know. Can you see my screen right now?
I sure can.
Brilliant, thank you. So please understand that we are not a fancy resort or an excuse to have a psychedelic experience. We are a church, and all ceremonies that take place here are considered to be sacred. I found this very interesting, and it probes me to ask what kind of intentions you guys would or wouldn't consider appropriate for the retreat. Sorry, for the sanctuary. I knew I was going to do that. I knew I was going to do that. And the reason I ask is because I've very recently come back from Colombia. I was at an ayahuasca retreat. It was brilliant, absolutely fantastic. Met some wonderful people there. Um, and whilst we were all there for some kind of mental healing, I wouldn't say that everybody was there for a spiritual awakening. So, some people were more, I would describe as being on the physicalist side, like they believed in the benefits of the medication, but they were totally convinced it was more to do with your own psyche rather than anything kind of higher power or however you want to describe it. So, is your sanctuary more for people who are already spiritually minded, or would you be welcoming to skeptics as long as they approach with an open mind and with respect?
Yeah, I mean, I think that you just put that perfectly. And the reality is the reason why we say that is because some people are looking for what I, said earlier is the resort type of experience where they're looking for this type of retreat that is, well, luxurious.
Mm,
And we aren't that, like I said before. We create an environment that is more so the feeling of being like at home. It's just like warm, comforting. So that way you feel safe and you can really immerse into the experience. We
mm.
do, through our intake screening process and everything, we see what people are trying to achieve by coming and sitting with us. And if somebody is just trying to have a trip sitter, because there's a difference between just someone that's coming because they want a trip and someone that's going in with intentional, reasons of healing or whatnot, those are two different things that we look at. And if someone's just coming to try to trip because they think it's cool, then we don't really, align with that necessarily. And I'm
Hmm.
not saying that it's a bad thing, but it's just there's other
Not
places
appropriate.
that are more aligned for that. And so the best case scenario, if you wanted to say that, it would be someone that is, yeah, trying to connect more with something bigger, like I mentioned of the reason of our church is
Mm,
connecting to that bigger spirit that is experiencing everything at once.
mm.
Um, and so a lot of people are trying to connect in with that, but you find that some people who may not believe in that sit and then they start to open up to the idea
Oh,
because of their
wow.
experiences. And we've sat with, a couple hundred people at least now, and it's amazing how many people on their own come to very similar conclusions of what they start to believe in just because of the experiences they have.
I've always been considered myself to be very open-minded with regards to the universe and creation and there being some kind of higher power. And my experiences on psychedelics have kind of solidified my spirituality, I would say. And I've become considerably more sympathetic to the concept of there being one consciousness and us having our own different experiences and then that coming back to ultimately one consciousness. And I wondered if that was something that aligned with your beliefs. That's something that I've developed through my meditation and my psychedelic taking. And I just wondered if that's something that you guys liaise with at all.
It is exactly. It is very
Mm,
much so that. And I would say if I were to try to put my beliefs into words, it is that there is one consciousness that is infinitely experiencing itself through everything that exists. And that includes me and you. It also includes this microphone. It includes every
mm,
single thing that exists. And the consciousness is essentially the intelligence of the energy that, permeates through everything and is everything.
mm. Very interesting. I think the number one argument people have when it comes to psychedelics leading you to enlightenment is you're taking a drug, which is my number one pet hate word, by the way, which plays around with your serotonin levels and your neurotransmitters and causes you to trip. And therefore, because you're taking something externally, it kind of takes away the authenticity or the integrity of the idea that it's anything kind of otherworldly or anything spiritual. How would you respond to that? What would you say to that?
Well, I would say that I can totally see where they're coming from, for one,
Mm,
But what I also would say is that we exist as humans based off of chemicals and all of those things that run through our brains, run through our bodies. It's how we experience being alive. And so no matter what, even if you're sitting in meditation or other spiritual practices, those are just other modalities to be able to come to the same type of place. And
Mm,
so I always like to look at, working with psilocybin and other plant medicines as a way to essentially, it's like a doorway into that type of experience. It's not
mm,
something that is meant to keep you there. Just like with meditation, you can't stay and meditate all your life. It's just another way in. And so, I don't think that it takes away the validity of the experience, because what psilocybin really does is it helps to lower our protection mechanisms. It helps to what people would call dissolve the ego,
mm.
which allows for us to have our separation kind of dissolve. And you get to experience that more universal oneness and consciousness. And I don't think that you can take that type of experience away from a person, even if it is more chemically induced, you know? And let's be real, a psilocybin mushroom is literally a mushroom. It's not
Mm.
some sort of chemical that's made in a laboratory or anything like that. And so it's the same type of thing we could say with how even sugar affects your brain and it sends different chemicals and stuff. So all of our experiences are based off of chemical reactions in the brain. Certain things trigger it, other things don't. And so to say that one is acceptable and the other is not, I guess is up to the person who has the opinion, right?
Mm.
But it's hard to take that experience away when it's very, very real when you're in it.
Yeah, you basically hit the nail on the head with regards to what I was going to respond to that, because my interpretation, as you said, is all experience is determined by brain chemistry. And just because our serotonin levels and neurotransmitters are altered under the state of psychedelics, it doesn't mean that that state of consciousness is any less, as you said, valid than any other state. Our
Right.
normal state of consciousness is just how our brain is, how it operates, and it doesn't mean that it's the ultimate state of consciousness, that's
Right.
actually something I've only very recently been able to kind of get my head around, because it's just a very interesting concept, I think.
Well, and I would even take it one step further. They're starting to prove that consciousness is outside of the brain per se. It
Mm,
is not the brain. We identify with our consciousness as the physical thing, but I see the brain as a receiver. And so when we're able to dismantle the separation of it to more identify in the consciousness rather than with the physical, then we start to be able to experience it all. And so all that the psilocybin mushroom really does is dissolve that physical sense of self, especially when we put an eye mask on and go inside. You're
mm.
experiencing a different perception of reality through that.
I love that. So somebody said to me, like when you're dreaming and like you're seeing these characters within your dreams, and they're all essentially your own consciousness acting out different roles. That could be kind of like what life is, this could all be one big dream, and this all of that. It kind of makes sense with the whole one consciousness idea. So when somebody said that to me, my brain just went, wow.
Oh yeah.
um,
I mean, if you think about it, it starts to put things in perspective that everything is in the mind of God, you
absolutely,
know? And if you
absolutely.
look at Hermetic philosophies and stuff like that, it says that all is mind. Everything is in the mind of God, and everything's being created through the imagination of God, including me and you.
Mhm.
And so we're just having the opportunity to experience what it's like to exist as us in our own unique perspectives.
Exciting stuff, eh? Exciting stuff. So coming on to the medicine itself, why mushrooms in particular? What is it about mushrooms over any other psychedelic that is so meaningful to you?
Good question. And, there's one big answer to it, and it's that mushrooms are what called me. And everything just sort of naturally unfolds. So, of course, I'm extremely spiritual. So I believe that everything just unfolds naturally without having to force it. Whatever falls
Mm,
into place is right. And I trust my intuition more than anything. And mushrooms have always been the thing that just felt right. It was a natural type of, thing that I could work with rather than some synthetic created thing like LSD. And I've worked with LSD before, but it was nothing that I wanted to continue work with. Where with psilocybin, it just feels like a friend, like an ally. and the energy to it is really gentle and beautiful while also being very truthful. And
Mm,
so that call is something that really I find is important because that's how you know you're in alignment instead of like trying to do it because I think it's cool or something like
mm.
that. Not saying that that's wrong, but it's just a different way of approaching it.
No, I hear you. I actually very recently did an LSD trip with a few friends over Christmas, and they take the medicine quite seriously. And we were doing like our own little sanctuary retreat, whatever you want to call it. And we were meditating, and I found that I didn't connect in the same way that I do with mushrooms. And it's interesting because LSD derives from a fungus, right? But it goes through this chemical process that I'm not too informed on before it gets to you. Whereas, mushrooms, ayahuasca, they're unprocessed, and there's a kind of like an artificial flavor to the experience on LSD. Would you agree? Like that's
I
how I
agree
see it.
completely. Yeah, I
So,
agree completely. In a sense that for some reason with myself, and maybe it's just because I've worked with mushrooms for so long now, that anything that is synthetic has a different energy to me
mm.
compared to something that's natural. It even creates a different taste in my mouth, as funny as maybe that sounds, but it
No,
is
I hear
true.
you. Yeah. Mm.
And so there's something to that that just for me, when I trust my own feelings in my body, it just isn't quite as in alignment as what the mushroom is.
Hmm. So coming on to the legalities, you actually covered it earlier on, but I just wanted to say I did a bit of research and I found a lot of kind of conflicting information about, some websites were saying it's decriminalized, which we have it over here, but we don't have it to the extent that you guys seem to have it. It's like everything seems decriminalized in the US and Canada. It's something that kind of goes over my head, being legal and not legal at the same time. Um, Other websites said it was decriminalized, but only for religious practice, and other websites said they're just not legal. So maybe you could just clear that up once again, because I didn't quite catch what you were saying earlier on.
Yeah, so in whole in the United States, technically federally, it is illegal.
Hmm.
And the difference, though, is that in certain states, people have, or, the states have legalized it, per se, under certain conditions, where, you have like Oregon and stuff like that, where they're now starting to work more and more in a therapy setting with those. So it's allowing for more of the studies to take place and start to really experiment with that type of, process now being more available, learning what it
Mm.
can do. In other places, like in Massachusetts even, there's certain like districts or towns, cities that they have decriminalized it within that certain area. And so what that means is that it's still technically illegal, but instead of like going to jail for it, you'll probably just get a ticket and
Mm.
they're not focused on it like as if it was this big thing that's like at the top of their priority list.
Got you.
It's something that is like, where they're not selling it at the stores like as if cannabis may be at a dispensary, but it's not necessarily that they're out trying to, crack down on it to the intensity that they used to.
Mm. It's really unfortunate that psychedelics as a whole are illegal in most countries because it makes it very difficult to research the effects. I actually did a bit of homework and I saw that in 1971, the United Nations declared a blanket ban on psychedelics. They were scheduled as labeled as a Schedule 1 substance, which means they had zero medical value and high potential for abuse, which I think we're slowly starting to realize is a load of crap. And this was due to, I think it was called the counterculture movement, where people started questioning mainstream social norms and advocating for human rights and protesting the Vietnam War. And I think this kind of scared the government a bit, right? Because
Yeah.
that's not what they want to happen. But it's a shame because they kind of threw psychedelics in the same pot as heroin and cocaine, the class A's, and it makes sense because you know how profound these trips can be, and they had no idea what it was. So I'm not surprised, but we've kind of shot ourselves in the foot now, I feel, because we've created this stigma, and I would assume that researchers and scientists too scared to even put their name to it because they don't want to damage their professional reputation by saying that they're interested in researching the benefits. So,
Right.
Rory, what are the benefits of psilocybin mushrooms apart from obviously connecting to the spirit? What can you tell me about the reasons you could take psilocybin?
Well, I mean, a big one for me, which not a ton of people I think look at, is the amount of neuroplasticity in a way of being able to like consciously reprogram the brain. So, of course, people are saying the neurogenesis and everything is extremely profound. It helps us to rewire ourselves, rewire old habits and thinking patterns and stuff. But a lot of the times people are hoping that it's going to naturally happen without them having
Mm,
to do anything, right? And so we can take a look at that and start to come into it more intentionally, like we do at the church, and actually do things in a really conscious type of way. And so being able to almost like take control of our minds to learn how to program them and work with psilocybin in a way that it speeds up that process tenfold really is just like profound in a sense that it allows us to start to take our power back.
mm,
And I think that what you were saying about it becoming kind of a blanket illegal thing, I think it's because these types of experiences do show us that we have the power ourselves.
mhm,
Things outside of ourselves actually don't have as much power as we were told they did. And so, psilocybin to me is something that allows us to wake up to our true power within.
mhm,
And through being able to work with it in an intentional way, we can really transform our lives in any type of way we want to. So it's a really beautiful thing because it has the power to change the world if it's done properly. And a lot of fear mongering, I think, was done early on with it when they made it illegal and everything because they didn't want people to be going against what they wanted people to be going for.
mhm. I've also found that the larger doses have provided me with this, what I would describe as this huge mental shift in my perspective of life in general. So I feel like I've almost got this hypersensitivity to people's positions and their perspectives, and I'm less concerned with people's opinions if they've got any negative opinions about me. You don't identify with someone else's perception. That idea is something that they have created in their head, and more often than not, it's normally constructed from very limited information. And just because it's their opinion or just because they say it out loud, it doesn't make it inherently true. And I think that's why a lot of people struggle in life because you need to be consistently um, critically thinking to remember that fact. And that's what the mushrooms have helped me out with in such a significant way, is keeping in that mindset. And it's a gift, man, because people are taking their lives over this shit, Like
Oh
people
yeah.
get too attached to the opinions of others. So,
Well, we're
um,
programmed into that,
oh,
you
dude.
know? That's the truth, is that we look for external validation to ensure that we are good enough to feel safe. And then if we believe that we're not good enough because people outside of us go against what we believe is right, then people start to spiral. And
Mm,
so that's where it's like what you said is really impactful, that now you start to see that the way they're being is a reflection of them and not of you. The way you
mm.
are is a reflection of you. And that's what psilocybin does, is it starts to let us see the difference in perspective.
It's it's just such I just can't get over how I wish I feel like it comes to us at the right time. I feel like I was in a stage of my life where I really needed this realization because it's mushrooms in particular have always been something that's excited me, and I've always been found them very interesting, but using them in this way is not something that I was clued up on at all. And now I know what I know. I just can't believe that so many people don't know about it. It's kind of it's exciting though. I hope that as time progresses in our lifetime, that that we will see a day when it is more it's just a commonly used thing, you know? And it's just a no, it's just a fact,
Right.
a known
I think it's
fact. So,
inevitable. I
mm,
think that it's inevitable. I think that if we go back to what we said about everything being one consciousness experiencing itself, the way that I've perceived it through my experiences is that consciousness is trying to evolve to self-realize, right? And so through that, we can see that the evolution of consciousness is naturally taking place. And so we're just coming to a place right now in the evolution of consciousness where this is what is right, what is meant to be, so that it can continue on that process to the next steps.
the big realization, eh? That's why I
Yeah.
think of it as.
Yeah, I'm
Um,
with you.
I just wanted to talk about microdosing. I know that you use microdosing in your own setting, and I wanted to come on to that right at the end, if that's okay. But just for the moment, I wanted to speak to you about um, have you got personal experience with microdosing, or do you know people who have? And if so, what do you understand the benefits of that to be?
Yeah, I mean, I have very in-depth experience with microdosing. I do coaching and stuff, which I know we'll get into, but
Of course.
for me, microdosing has been extremely impactful, and I do it, many, many times throughout the week, depending on the protocol that I'm navigating through. Really, the thing that's so profound with it is that you're getting the benefits of psilocybin without being impaired as if you were doing a macro dose or a bigger dose, so you're able to still get the expanded neuroplasticity and everything to help you to be able to rewire your brain. You're also helping for your defense mechanisms to be lowered slightly so that way you can have things that are suppressed and repressed come up in a gentle fashion to be able to, witness them and experience them in a healthy way. And
Hmm.
so I work with a lot of people that are navigating through this process, and it helps people greatly even to boost their mood because, like I said, it connects to the serotonin receptors. And so it can help with that. It also just allows for you to have a more in-depth ability to have self-reflection.
Mm,
And so
absolutely.
that in everyday life, the way I always put it is that microdosing is like you're able to do the work and integrate at the same time instead of having to take a pause from life to go into a big ceremony and then integrate afterwards. So it's
Mm,
kind of a simultaneous practice where the two are combined. It's really profound.
I like that. I've just listed a range of different benefits that I've found from my own experience, but also I do like to highlight that from anecdotal reports. So, like if you go on YouTube and you look at like any um, psilocybin video, what you will find is paragraph after paragraph of people just spilling their heart out and saying how their lives have been changed by these substances, So I've got some of these from those comments as well. So improved focus, enhanced creativity, increased productivity, reduced anxiety, elevated mood, emotional balance, higher energy levels. The one that I found interesting was improved ADHD symptoms because I've got a few friends that are struggling to get Ritalin at the moment. There's this big shortage and they're struggling. But yeah, if this could help alleviate some of those symptoms, I think that could be a big one. And finally, overcoming addiction. So one thing I wanted to mention was I had a 10-year marijuana addiction. So I'm 27 now, and it's actually longer than 10 years. I'm 28 actually. It was my birthday the other day. I should remember.
Happy birthday.
Um, thank you, dude. No, I started smoking marijuana when I was either 14 or 15, and I smoked it consistently ever since. And I wanted to quit. It was ruining my life. It was damaging my relationships and stopping my productivity. And I was just a nightmare to work with, and all these things. And I was conscious of this. And it got to the point where I was going to my dealer. I was walking to my dealer's house, and I had all these voices in my head saying, "Dude, what you doing? Like this, you're gonna be anxious tomorrow." Da 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 da. And I still could not help myself. And people say that marijuana isn't an addictive substance because it's not physically addictive. Like you don't have kind of withdrawal symptoms, I guess.
Right.
But for me, my personal explanation of an addiction is something that you want to stop, but you can't, you know? And I started coming back around. I started microdosing maybe about a year ago, and I was microdosing for improved mood and a couple of those other things that I mentioned on that list. And what I found is within about 3 months, I went cold turkey on the marijuana, and I've been free from marijuana now for I guess 7 or 8 months. And
Wow.
the thing that's interesting about that is I didn't know that this is one of the benefits of microdosing. This is something that I learned later on. So for people that might say it's the what's the term called when it's the placebo effect. That's where I was going
Yeah.
with that. If for people to say that it's the placebo effect, I actually can vouch for it not being because I didn't know about it. So, but
Right.
that's very cool. Going on back to the larger doses, I find that, or I have found on a few of my trips that it kind of strips you of your ego and allows you to perceive situations without judgment or self-criticism, and allows you to it leads you to kind of life-changing decisions regarding maybe your behavior or a decision that you've made. And you're almost seeing your life from a third-person perspective, as if you're maybe a counselor talking to a stranger. And
Sure.
for that reason, I think it's a fantastic tool for personal growth. And I think people are very quick to judge. I think you were saying earlier on, it's not some magic pill that's going to just change your life, but it's a tool that can help bring to the surface what is already within. And that's why it kind of works, or it's supposed to work so well alongside psychotherapy. I mean, that's what introspection is, right? They're kind of
Right.
leading you down this pathway, and it just helps out with that. So very interesting.
Yeah.
Um, I don't. Sorry, go on.
No, I was just gonna jump in and say that I align so deeply with everything that you've said. I mean, it it does help with that almost witnessing the mind is the best way to put it, where you do separate yourself from the identification of you. So you're able
Mm,
to witness it from a neutral standpoint,
hmm
And that's where, especially with microdosing, it's really impactful to incorporate practices as like, meditation practices to be able to watch your thoughts so that you can get a better understanding of them and everything, because then you can actually know where you stand and you can make impactful shifts in your life because you're able to see it from a neutral standpoint that creates a new perspective.
Absolutely. When it comes to the introspection, I don't think people on the whole are kind of opposed to that. I think it's when we start talking about the spiritual side of it that kind of turns people away. And that's why I'm so interested to speak to you, because connecting with the spirit is the integral reason you take the medicine, right? And I can liaise with that. I feel like I've connected to this same spirit. And I wanted to ask if you would mind sharing any experiences that you've had that have either solidified what you already knew. I don't know if you were kind of a religious person before, or anything that led to some realization about what this is. Would you mind sharing anything like that at all?
Sure. Well, I think that first, a good thing to know is that so I did grow up religious, right?
Mm.
So I went to church every Sunday, Sunday school and everything like that. But then I completely like rejected the church and I went and I became atheist and I didn't believe in God at all
Wow.
and said that there's no way that God would be what they're making him to be and everything. And then, as time went on, I became what I would call agnostic, where I believed something was there. I didn't know what the heck it was, though. Through working with psilocybin, I became probably a bigger believer in God than I've ever believed in my life and directly connected with spirit. And, I would say that most people start working with psilocybin don't necessarily go into it as if they're trying to connect with spirit per se.
hmm
But over time, it almost, well, in most cases, I would say that you naturally come to a place where you start to believe in it because
That
of
was
the
my
experience
situation,
that you
dude.
have. And it just
Absolutely.
unlocks what is without the judging mind, without the belief systems that have been pushed onto us and everything. We get behind the programming and we see what exists outside of that. And that is just that, unification of all to one solid consciousness that permeates through everything.
So, what kind of impact have these experiences had on your members? Do you ever get people reporting back saying how their lives have been changed or how they've transformed? Or what kind of things do they say?
Well, I can say that I can't even count the amount of people that have said, wow, this has completely changed my life. And, so
Wow.
I'd say more people than not have some sort of an experience that absolutely changes their life, or at least their view of life and how they're navigating through it. Um, there's obviously a small handful of individuals that it didn't have the impact that they wish. That's natural because, not everything is perfect. We can't promise everybody's different, I guess is what I mean. Um, but most people are then on a path to uncover more, to transform themselves more, to heal more that they are starting to witness in themselves, because they're seeing that they have these limiting beliefs or difficulties in life, you know, and they're needing to uncover that. And so they start to have insights into it and they're like, oh my gosh, this is what
Mm.
I've been looking for in a lot of ways. And so then they continue on that path. We have people that come back and sit in, multiple ceremonies over time, people that go from ceremony to working with me with microdosing. And so a lot of people that get onto this path, if they're really intentional about it and wanting to transform into whatever they hope to, then they usually continue on this path, at least for a while. Eventually, you can come to a place where you can learn how to do this work without necessarily needing to sit in ceremony.
Mhm. Brilliant. Do you know what? I've had so many experiences now on mushrooms and now ayahuasca where I would say I've obtained some deeper understanding of the universe. And as I said earlier, I've absolutely connected to this spirit you're referring to. The thing that I'm struggling to decide for myself is if it is a spirit or if it's an extraordinary example of the depths the human psyche can take you to. And I think that's where we might draw a bit of a crossroads. I wouldn't even say a crossroads because I don't have an opinion, right? I don't lean toward the side. I'm just trying to be my auntie. She's a scientist, and she's always taught me to be very skeptical, not doubtful, but skeptical. So I'm trying to look at this with a really because I think I've got ADHD. I'm really typical for getting carried away with things. Like I have to really like slow down and see it for what it is. And the truth is I'm just not sure at the moment. All I can say is after witnessing what I have, it became immediately clear to me that there is so much more to this than we realize. And the problem is articulating it, right? Because
Hmm.
it's almost like a sixth sense. Like you're not seeing, you're not hearing, but you're comprehending, you know?
You're
Um,
experiencing.
oh, dude. Have you heard of a YouTube channel called Coming Home? Are you familiar with that at all?
Oh,
So
actually.
it's got quite a large following. It's a space for people to talk about their near-death experiences. And I sometimes listen to it when I'm going to bed because it's very relaxing. And dude, some of the stuff they're explaining on there, it's like identical to what I've experienced on mushrooms, and it just heightens um my interest even more, because
Oh, yeah.
oh dude, it's crazy. It's crazy. If you don't mind, I wanted to share a trip story with you. It's a very short one. I've kind of written down how I would articulate it in the best way because this is what I would interpret as connecting with the spirit. I've experienced it. I've taken mushrooms hundreds of times probably, and I've only experienced this about three times. So I just wondered if you liaised with it at all. So I would say that I've found myself what I would describe as immersed in the universe, and there's this atmosphere, this interconnected fabric that is woven from the consciousness of every living being, past and present. And when I'm when I was going to say when I see this fabric, but it's almost like I'm a part of this fabric. Um, every time this happens, I can sense my ancestors as this kind of integral part of this collective essence, and our presence is combined in this timeless shared awareness. I mean, tears coming down my face, dude, and this is something that seems to last for about 15, 20 minutes, but you know what it's like in psychedelic world, that could be like an hour.
Oh yeah.
And that another way of have you seen the film Brother Bear? It's a kids film. It's a cartoon. No, it's a really good way of comparing what I'm talking about because, long story short, there's these two brothers and they're in a tribe, and one of the brothers gets killed by the bear, and the other brother goes to avenge him and kills the bear, and he ends up getting reincarnated basically into this bear. But when this scene happens, the skies just open up, and there's this light that comes out, and there are all these animals running past, and they're all made of the light. And he goes up with the bear, and he's kind of combined. This is definitely something that was inspired by a psychedelic trip because it's just so similar to what I'm talking about. Am I making any sense to you with regards to connecting to this spirit? Because not only am I witnessing something, I'm feeling this sensation of realization.
Oh yeah.
I'll let you respond to that.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, everything you said I resonate with deeply because
Oh,
I've had
dude.
similar experiences. And this is what I said, why I said earlier, a lot of people sit and they have these same type of experiences and come to the same type of realizations. Um, but I mean, it is this experiencing of being, of kind of being intertwined with all that is, was, and ever will be at the same time.
Hmm.
It's that time evaporates because everything's right now and everything just becomes expansive and it is just it all. You can't put it into words. There's really no way to be able to. And even if I
No,
were to try to put it into words, it would never describe what it actually is.
wouldn't
And
compliment
so
it. Yeah.
yeah, that's where it really is just an experience that has to be felt and experienced by the individual because the mind can't make it up and we sure as heck can't articulate it.
Mm.
So it's taking us to a place that is bigger than anything we could possibly fathom.
It's nice to talk to you because I wouldn't have this conversation with my non-psychedelic taking friends because they'd probably have me sectioned or something.
Well,
It's the
that's the
first time
thing is
I've
a lot
I've
of
shared that.
people, yeah, a lot of people they
They just don't
haven't
get it.
experienced it.
No.
Yeah.
So coming on to the mushrooms, do you guys grow your own mushrooms? How does that work? What's the situation there?
Yeah, so we do cultivate our own
You
mushrooms
do.
and yep,
Okay,
yep.
brilliant.
So that's really important to us because the energy of the mushrooms is critical. And so everything is energy in this existence, quite literally. So what you are putting out is what you get back, essentially. And so if we were to go to somebody else and acquire the sacrament from them, it would have a completely different energy to it than if I were to grow it from, say, a spore to literally a fruit. And all the energy and love and connection and relationship that goes and is grown from that experience, that is then passed into the fruit, which is then offered to our members to be able to have that. And that energy is completely different and so much more calm and transformative than other ones that you may get if you didn't do it yourself.
Wow, that's so special, dude. I'm not gonna lie, I wasn't actually expecting you guys to grow your own mushrooms. 'Cause I would imagine that is there a lot of labor that goes in to that?
It's a it's a waiting game, let's just say that. But yeah, I
Yeah.
mean, you have to be very particular and make sure that you're clean, you're sterile, that everything is aligned, and you have to also take into account that it goes wrong sometimes, and that's just the way it goes. Not everything is perfect, and that's part of having an in-depth relationship with them.
So how do you I mean, are you guys getting enough kind of members coming consistently? Are you constantly growing mushrooms? How big is your grow? And also, do you store them and do they kind of lose potency after a while? That's kind of sounds like quite a lot to manage, you know?
Yeah, so I mean, we have a pretty steady amount of people that, come in contact with us and sit with us and everything. But we don't grow a massive amount. We grow enough for what we need, and that's it. And
Mm,
so we don't have a ton that is just sitting around or anything because it's kind of just in a natural cycle. As it grows, it's also being consumed per se or worked with. And that's to me is part of the natural cycle in itself because with creation is destruction. And so
mm.
we allow for enough to be cultivated so that we are set up and prepared, and then that just transforms back into that cycle of being worked with for more to grow in, and then that goes. So it's not a big thing, but it's enough for it to be the perfect amount.
I actually had a little experience of growing my own non-magic mushrooms, of course, and I actually really enjoyed the process of learning about the mycelium and how mushroom is the fruit of the mycelium and something that I actually didn't know, and maybe for people that are watching, this is general knowledge, and I just didn't um, take a lot of attention in biology. But you know how all plant life, I believe, or a lot of plant life, trees, etc., are connected with this mycelium, and it's kind of like a big life support machine where if a tree, I don't know, say gets cut down or is lacking nutrients, it can kind of request nutrients from the other trees, and they're conscious, dude, talking to each
Right.
other. And I just found that fascinating. I found that absolutely fascinating. And also, are you familiar with the term symbiosis? Kind of like this is maybe common knowledge once again, but it's something that fascinated me, and I only just kind of found out. Somebody gave me this example of a bear in the woods that has a fish carcass, and it drops the fish carcass and walks off. And slowly, the mycelium will absorb the nutrients from the fish carcass, and the plant life can feed from that. And I just found that fascinating,
Yeah.
really interesting. All of this just came from my research of how to grow these mushrooms, and yeah, it didn't work out well for me. I didn't no, I what happened? They got contaminated, They got
Yeah.
contaminated, and I had a bit of a nightmare because if the pinheads don't grow, you can cold shock them. I went through that
hmm
process, so it was already like a prolonged thing, and then they grew, and I'd obviously not been careful enough because they were covered in mold. So, but I
Yeah.
will try
You got to be
again. I will
careful
try
with
again.
that. That's the
Mm,
hard thing is when you're growing mushrooms in any type, gourmet mushrooms, medicinal, whatever it is, you're literally creating an environment that is for mold to grow because that's what you're
mm.
growing, a
Yeah, that's
fungus.
literally what
And so
it.
you have to make sure that you don't get any of the wrong mold spores in that environment because it will just grow like wildfire. And
hmm
so it's really important to be as sterile as possible and be really careful.
So, do you guys use any particular strains? And if so, is there any reason why?
So a common strain that we use is Golden Teacher.
Hmm
And then we have a handful that we use. But Golden Teacher is the most common. We also use Penis Envy.
hmm
And there's of course different variations of Penis Envy. There's an OG Penis Envy, there's albino Penis Envy. Each one has their own energies and characteristics to them. We also use one that's called Yeti. That's a more albino variation. A lot of these are just like crossbred per se to create a new strain.
hmm
But and then we've worked with Hillbilly. I mean, there's so many out there, and each one of them really has their own energy to offer. Um, each one, of course, has different potency, so those are things to take into account. But for me, I've always looked at Golden Teacher as, well, look at the name of it. It's a golden teacher. So it's like
hmm
this warm, gentle, kind of like mentor showing you the way in a way that isn't too much over the top. It's not a super potent mushroom or anything. It's like this perfect middle of the ground, almost like good for anybody, especially beginners type of mushroom. Then you go to
Brilliant.
like a penis envy, and that's much more potent. And to me, the energy of that is like the energy of uh well, a direct truth without there being any type of filter over it. And it's just like, here you go, without there being some sort of, protection mechanisms where Golden Teacher can kind of usher it in a gentle way. Penis envy can just throw you into the depths, which is
Mhm.
much more harsh, or it can be if you're not ready to look at the truth face on like that.
Dude, I did we're going back like 6 or 7 months now, and I did a huge, quite a big penis envy dose. I think I did like 5 grams, and we've got these areas called the Commons back home, and it's just these big areas of land with beautiful viewpoints. And for the first 2 hours, I had the trip from hell. I felt like I was in a horror film or something, and I was like, "What have I done to myself?" But it turned into the most beautiful and rewarding, mesmerizing trip I've ever had. And it's weird how it can kind of take you down that path, and then boom, you're in this beautiful world of just magic. It's very crazy.
Oh yeah.
So coming on to the dosage, I think you just mentioning it there. How do you determine for someone like me who's like mushroom mad and his tolerance is high, and then you've got say a midget that's never done them before, and he's obviously going to be the opposite to me in terms of his uh how many mushrooms he can have. Like, how do you determine that? Is that just a conversation, or how do you work with that?
Well, we do it a little bit different than what most people would. And we do it, we have a really in-depth relationship with all the different strains because we've worked with them ourselves. And so we understand the potency of them, the energies and everything. And then through connecting with our members, hearing their intentions, what they're trying to work on, their experience level, of course, and everything too. We do it intuitively. So there's like a lot of places that they'll do, a scientific calculator equation or whatever to figure out, oh, this potency or this amount is perfect for you. But we
Brilliant.
don't do that. We,
Mm,
pull the mushrooms out. We basically ask them what is right. We have them tell us what strain is right, and we have them basically, through our own intuitional guide, tell us what mushrooms to even work with. So we'll choose certain ones and you weigh it to be able to document it because you have to be careful about making sure that you're accounting for everything just because of the way the world is. There's
hmm
regulations and stuff to make sure you're doing it right. But we don't do it in a way of like, oh, this is how much I need to know because my mind told me because I worked out an equation. It's like, no, I have a feeling because of the connection that I have with both the member and the mushroom, and I know that this will be right, and it always is. It's like people are like, I don't know how you do it. And I don't know how I do it either. I just trust.
But it
I
works,
just
eh?
trust into spirit and I trust into the mushroom, and I don't think I could ever do it another way now.
Wow. Thank you for that. I'm conscious that we've been talking for a while. I'm going to wrap this up soon. The last thing I wanted to talk about was your own business and your own ventures. Um, yeah, you're starting or have already started your own therapy with psilocybin. Tell us all about it. Tell us all about it.
Yeah, so essentially, after working with the church for 3 years and doing more macrodose ceremonies and stuff, there was this big calling for more microdose work,
Mm,
and guided microdose work on top of that, because a lot of people don't really know where to begin. They don't know what to do while they're doing it, and they just kind of are walking around aimlessly while they're trying to figure it out.
mm,
Um, so I have created my own business that, I do coaching and so I've created what is Inner Evolutions, and it's essentially a transformative coaching practice that works with psilocybin in a microdosing form to essentially combine the power of psilocybin with intentional coaching and in a structure to be able to get the most out of your practice. A lot of people that I work with are navigating through like mental health crises and stuff like that to really try to take back control of their lives. And with me in the ways that I navigate with psilocybin, I'm really able to allow for them to find their own truth within and be able to come to their own power and actually like master themselves because they have been taught how to be a human. Because
wow.
we aren't really taught how to be humans. We're taught, how to go to work or whatever, but not necessarily as in depth as how do you regulate your emotions. things like that. Because a lot of
So,
people right now don't know how to regulate their emotions or their nervous system and such, which causes for the complication and why we have such a big mental health crisis.
wow, it sounds like a really selfless thing to do, dude. I mean, how many clients have you got at the moment? Is it just starting out, or have you got quite a few? How's it going?
Well, so I'm still in the building phase, but I think that that's just life. You're always in a building phase.
Yeah.
And so what I kind of structured in two ways where I do microdosing groups. And so right now, I'm doing a microdosing group. There's 5 people in it. And, it's a 6 week, 45-day group that we navigate through essentially mastering microdosing, learning all the protocols, the what to do's, what not to do, the different practices and stuff to really get the most out of it. So I do that. That's like a reoccurring group that I host every 6 weeks or so. It's called Rise, to be able to rise into your empowerment, essentially.
Brilliant.
And then I also do one-on-one coaching with people, and I have a handful of clients with that, and that's growing all the time. And it's a cycle too. So there's people that are kind of ending the 6 week excursions and stuff as other people are coming in. But right now I don't know, I'm in the works with 10 to 15 different people all the time, I would say, on
Brilliant.
average.
And are they all, have you met them through the Sacred Earth Sanctuary, or is it your own kind of findings, or a bit of both?
It's a bit of both. We
Mm.
have about 350 to 400 members for the church.
Wow.
Um, yeah. So
Well,
it's become pretty big. Not everybody has come and sat with us, but they're people that interact with the community and stuff like that. Um, so there's a good number of people through the church, of course, that I work with. And then on top of that, there's other people that I've met through different outlets, whether it's just someone that I've connected with because I'm friends with them, Facebook, Instagram. I mean, there's so many outlets these days that people just kind of pop in from all over the place. And as
mm,
you connect with more and more people, the word spreads more and more, of course, too, because it's a newer thing. And there's not many people out there that do this work in a way that is as transformative and intentional.
sounds like a
So
great way to actually meet like-minded people as well, right? Like a nice social for everybody. And how have you learnt your therapeutic trade? I imagine that's quite a skill to be able to kind of lead people down this um, road to recovery with their thoughts. Where have you learned to do that?
I learned to do it from going through extremely depressive life cycles. That's the
Hmm.
truth. More than
Wow.
anything, it's my own life experience because, yeah, I mean, I went to the depths of hell and back, if you want to put it that way, truthfully, multiple times. And when I was there, I learned everything I could because I wanted to beat it. And so I was using it as a real life experience experiment to be able to understand myself and how the human mind works and how to transform ourselves from the inside out. And so I
Wow.
took all of that information and I'm still learning every day. I mean, life is a curriculum in my eyes. It's school. And so I can
Hmm.
learn more and more as I go. And so through that, I then teach people how to do essentially what I've done. To me, life experiences is the most valuable thing in the world. And if I had learned what I knew through a book, I wouldn't be as impactful as I am now
That is
because
so
of
true.
the life experience that I have.
So true.
It
I
also opens me up to having so much more compassion and understanding for where they're standing because I've been there.
mhm.
Rather than just looking at someone as a patient, I see them as just a human being that's navigating life in a different way.
What a gift, dude. I wish you were over here really. I wish we could have that kind of thing in the UK. I think we're quite behind you guys with regards to wow, actually I want to be hasty about saying that. Because you guys have got all these different states with different legalities, and you're obviously a much bigger country. Maybe that's why there's more opportunity. But over here, I can't see that happening anytime soon. But so
Oh, you'd be
are you?
amazed. You'd be
Oh, I
amazed because
hope
I
I
work
hope
with someone
so.
in Wales right now. So
Oh,
I'm working
really?
with someone in Wales. I'm about to hop on a call pretty soon with someone from Australia.
No
So
way.
I work with people all around the world and the thing that is really important to know is though I do of course work with the microdosing and stuff, the practices that I teach and stuff, you don't actually need to microdose. It just speeds up the process. And so It's
tool.
important to note that you can still have the same exact transformation by not even needing to microdose too. It's really just a different way of being able to approach it is all.
It
So
sounds like it would really complement the sanctuary as well, right? People coming for this experience of connecting to the spirit, and then they've got you. They can come and have some microdosing therapy afterwards. It all sounds good to me.
yeah, it's a good starting point because most of it's, a lot of the coaching these days is done online. So
Mhm.
it's through Zoom calls and everything to be able to connect with them in a easier fashion because people are all over the place. So it
Well,
becomes something that connects everybody together no matter how far you are away.
thank you, dude. I think I've asked everything I just about have, so I just can't tell you how appreciative I am. Have you got anything else that you'd like to ask or say that I've missed out before I bring this to a close?
I mean, the only thing that ever really comes to my mind is just to always, if you're going to be working with psilocybin, to just be working with it with an open heart, to look at it as if the psilocybin mushroom is the teacher and that we are to learn from it, to give it respect and to just have an open mind to what is to come. Because when we're rigid, we don't transform. And when we're able to expand and see things in a outside perspective, we can transform into anything we want. And
I love
so,
that, dude. Dude, I can't tell you how valuable and interesting this has been for me and hopefully for anybody else watching. Um, I can't tell you how inspired, I was going to say jealous, but that's a negative emotion. I'm inspired by you. I want to do what you're doing. I'm pursuing a psychology degree with some hope that I can maybe work with psychedelics one day. I'd love to come and visit you guys. I'm going to be going to see some family, and they're in southern eastern Canada slash northern eastern America. So I'll be flying
okay.
maybe within the. I know the US is a big place, so I don't know if I'll be anywhere near Massachusetts, but I can take a detour. I'm sure.
Yeah,
I'm
yeah, that
sure.
would be awesome. I would love to have you out.
I'd love to do that. So yeah, thank you for your time. Good luck with the business, and let's keep in touch, dude. Thank
Yeah,
you.
yeah. Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it. It's been a pleasure.
I appreciate you, man. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
There we go. You know, I have a lot of time for people who are willing to dedicate a chunk of their lives to helping others navigate theirs. And it's especially wholesome when it comes from someone who was once lost themselves. And it must be very rewarding to guide people through their past traumas and watch them close the door on it for the final time. I do believe psychedelics are the future for mental health, and it's really humbling to see organizations like the Sacred Earth Sanctuary already putting them into practice. I'm going to leave the contact details for the Sacred Earth Sanctuary and Rory's business, Inner Evolutions, in the description. Thank you for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed it, and we'll see you on the next one.